I still love being in a nice mountain stream with a really small 2-weight, 3-weight, throwing a dry fly during a hatch and catching a trout.
Hello, welcome to the Remote No Pressure Podcast. We're back. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. Hey, a question. Have you ever been hit in the face?
With anything in particular or a fist?
Let's start with the fist and we can go from there.
Well, back in college.
Yeah. Like, okay, I didn't know that hit in the face to me is normally like with a fist and you're like, I was like, okay, how many times
a dodgeball, a wrench? I don't know.
Oh, good. Yeah.
No. I've not been hit in the face.
With a fist.
With a fist. I never got in fights. I've been slapped a lot, but I mean, whoa, that makes me sound like a jerk.
Yeah. Slapped by like friends, family?
Yeah, it's mostly friends.
Ex-lovers, things like that.
All of the above, you know.
Yeah. I've never been slapped
but
by
wait,
an
I don't
ex-lover.
mean like family was. Never mind.
Well, you are from northern Michigan, so I'm just kidding. You are from Cadillac. No. No, that's crazy, man.
Oh.
No, I got punched in the face once by my brother.
Oh.
My parents would leave us home by ourselves in the
Yep.
summertime, which
Yep.
is, back then I was okay. And so one time my brother and I got into a fight. He's punched me right in the mouth.
Who?
Yeah. And I like got up and like my face, got my nose area with my, I was bleeding. And
Oh. I bet he got in trouble though.
no,
right?
I didn't tell him because he telling him because he told me to beat me up again if I told him. You telling me I'll give you another one. It's like, all right, it's cool. We're cool. We're cool.
If you're outing him now, do you got to watch behind your back now?
No, we've come to terms. We've come to terms.
I was going to say, you could hold that over his head still. I mean,
yeah.
You know?
And I've told my parents about the podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't think they know how to download anything. I don't think they know
what channel's that on?
Yeah, like, is that on AM or FM? No.
I can't get the digital.
Does that come on during Rush Limbaugh? Because if it does, I'm not listening to it. Rush is right, damn it. No, No, my dad does like Rush Limbaugh though. It's kind of funny to.
Yeah, my mom listens to him too.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah. Yep.
And back when we were young, it was like 11 to 2 because we were in Texas Central Time.
Mm-hmm.
Every day, my dad would like take his lunch, like listen to Rush Limbaugh.
We got to talk to you about your lunches. They're awfully long.
You're taking 3-hour lunches. You're fired. Okay. No, but the reason I ask about getting punched in the face is because did you ever get into a fight at all? Like a bully
no,
at
I was
school?
more the guy who would break up fights.
Really?
Yeah, nobody ever tried to step up to me. I was a big kid.
Yeah.
And so I would have friends get in fights, and I'd like pry them apart, and once in a while I'd have to kick somebody in the shins to get them off a friend. That kind of. I was that kid, but I never threw a fit.
Well, what happened? Like, tell us about a time when you broke up a fight, because I know there's a story that's right at the tip of your tongue.
The last one, let me think, was probably in elementary school, and a friend and this other kid were, the whole grabbing each other's shoulders, pushing each other around.
Right.
And I'm trying to pry them apart, and nobody's budging, so I just hauled off and kicked the kid in the shins. Because that's the manliest thing to do in 5th grade.
Right.
And he fell down and started bawling.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like, oh, crap. Now I'm going to have to sit in detention or put my nose against the wall, because that's what you do in elementary school.
Back then, yeah.
Yep. So I'm trying to, come on, get up, quit crying. And yeah.
Shut up.
I'm going to tell him, oh.
Now they just give you a juice box and a Ritalin and tell you you're okay.
That's a Friday night for me.
Did you beat that kid up? Yeah. Here you go, baby.
This will calm you down.
The guy that gets beat up gets in trouble. But yeah, that's funny because when my parents were divorced in 89, and then in 1990, my mom gets this great idea to move to Broadus, Texas. Broadus, Texas is in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It's near Sam Rayburn, or is it Toledo Bend? One of the big lakes down in Texas.
I have no idea. Are
you
talking
don't know.
Central Texas?
I'm talking deep East Texas. I'm talking border of Louisiana.
Oh, okay.
Texas.
Alligator country.
Not really. Not it, because it was like further north.
I don't believe in them.
Oh my god! So, but it was like it's a little town called Broadus, Texas. In like kindergarten to 12th grade is probably maybe 150 kids. It was like that small. It's a public school.
Yep.
And I was a new kid. And so this was like fifth
Prison
grade.
rules.
Or
Just go out
fourth
and punch
grade.
the biggest guy in the face.
Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't that kind of guy. So I go to the school, and there was this kid. And I don't remember anybody's name there except this one big kid named Terry. But this other kid was named Chucky Mouton. Okay? And I'm not talking about Mouton that plays for the Astros. I'm talking Chucky Mouton. And he was the bully in town, or the bully in class. And so if you wanted any respect, win or lose, you got to fight Chucky Mouton. And I got into it one time, right in the middle of the classroom. We just started beating the snot out of each other.
Wow, right in the middle of class.
Yeah. Well, it was like, when you come in from recess
Okay.
and your teacher's not in there yet,
Yep.
and you kind of throw a desk,
Yep.
and stuff like that. And the teacher just broke us up, didn't send us to the office, nothing.
Sit down.
No, yeah, sit down, Chucky, you're at it again.
Do your multiplication table.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember how scared I was. And
Your heart started beating.
And I knew that day was coming when I started class there because everyone fought Chucky Mouton. Okay, I don't know. I tried to look him up.
Chucky had some emotional problems.
He probably did.
Yeah.
Probably something at home. I mean, this is the middle of nowhere. It's not even it's barely on Google Maps kind of stuff. And I'm sure he did have people like that have issues. And so, but I've tried to look him up just see where he is because you just want him to really have a bad life. Okay, let me be honest, but I can't find him, so I don't think they have electricity.
I don't think
yet.
he survived high school.
I don't think they have electricity in Broadus yet. So
Oh.
no, I'm just kidding. No, if you're in Broadus and you're
There
listening,
goes our
first of all, if you're in Broadus, Texas, and you are listening to this, you need to move. Okay, yes. There's nothing there but red dirt and Chucky Mouton. So no, but I just remember that adrenaline feeling. And this week on the Remote No Pressure podcast, we have a doctor. Okay, Dr.
Okay.
Alex with us. And the reason I bring up fighting is because he actually ringsided MMA,
That is cool.
mixed martial arts.
Yep.
You ever watch that?
Yep, I've actually done gigs down at the downtown here in one of our venues.
Really?
It wasn't UFC, but it was a cage boxing, cage matches, and they had a fight and then they had a band. So I would do the band. I would do the sound for the band. And then they'd have another fight and then back to another band. So
they were different bands,
just local,
yokels,
local metal. Nothing. I don't remember any of them, which they've gone nowhere probably.
Yeah, our most famous band here is probably the Verve Pipe.
Yeah.
They came from Grand Rapids.
Yep.
And the other day I ran into Brian Vanderark at Starbucks.
How did he make your coffee?
Oh, that was bad. Oh, no.
I bought one of my guitars from AJ, the old guitar player, at Guitar Center. He was a salesman there.
Really?
Yep.
They had the hit song Freshman.
Yep,
No,
back in
it's not called
1996.
Freshman, though. It's called something else. But
I don't remember. I always
Maybe
remember
it
it as freshmen.
we
too.
were merely
Yep.
freshmen.
Yep.
That was our one hit wonder.
I was in the studio with Brian during his first solo project in 2000 or 2002.
Station C.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Station C.
It's gone now.
Yeah, it is. That was a legendary place. That was where all the big Grand Rapids people went.
Yeah, that was that's a little Grand Rapids history for you
Yeah.
folk.
Yep.
But I saw him at
First one's free.
I was kind of surprised to see him.
Yeah.
He wasn't working there. He was
Yeah,
getting
I know.
coffee. But I was
Yeah, I
like,
just gotta make
that's
jokes
Brian
about that.
Vanderark. So that was really cool. But anyways, back to the subject of fighting. This guy is right there first. He's the first, one on the scene when somebody gets beat up or, and he also has a nonprofit as well. And
He probably has great seats.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're going to have to put you in the nosebleed, Doc. So it's cool because he talks a lot about adrenaline,
Yeah.
probably how I felt with Chucky Mouton, you're going to fight. And that's the only closest thing, a fifth grade fight. I haven't gotten to a fight since really fifth grade. It's not every day kind of thing.
We should start a fight club.
We should, but we can't talk about it.
Nope.
So
This will be the last we hear of that.
hear of what, Bill? God, that movie was a great movie.
That was a
wasn't
great
it?
movie.
God, we could just talk all night about stuff like that.
We can derail so easily. Yeah.
Fight Club. Yeah, Fight Club was a brilliant movie.
Yeah, it was.
And those guys are fighters. I mean, the blood and Meatloaf was in
I was
that
just going to
movie.
say, you remember Meatloaf?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't say what his name was. But
Yeah, we try to refrain it, but if you've seen the movie, you know who's like that's the most memorable character to me. Obviously, Brad Pitt and those guys did just a great job, but
Yeah.
for some reason, his character, and every time I use bar soap, I think about like this is disgusting. But what a great movie!
Yeah, it was.
But you think about that, like with MMA and these guys, they're just pure Fight Club. I mean, it's just gloves off, beating the snot out of each other, and it's got to be 100% adrenaline.
A lot of discipline too to be able to do that and be able to take the abuse and push your body to the limits like that.
Yeah, I mean, he talks in the interview about that. Like,
that's awesome.
Guys who broke different bones, like randomly, and fought through the fight.
Yeah. Oh,
It's like, can you
you ever
imagine?
watch those fights and like seeing an arm get snapped?
Oh, I mean, I would just start crying. I mean, I'd just be like,
I think Brock Lesnar. Do you know who he is?
No,
he's
no.
a WWE, WWF, WWE guy, and he's this huge dude from Minnesota,
okay.
and he won the championship in WWE. Then he went to try to go play for the Vikings, I think.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He bombed at that, so he went in and he like won the championship in UFC. But his
Really?
first or second fight, they broke his arm. I want to say.
Wow.
Or maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I want to say he broke his arm. Yeah.
Wow.
And then he had to beat the guy who beat him, who broke his arm, and then he won the championship like a few rounds later. But it was crazy. Yeah.
And then
Some of these guys-
did he get married to Miss Elizabeth?
No, he married Sable. I don't know if you remember Sable.
Yeah, she's a little after
Miss
my
Elizabeth
time.
is dead.
I know.
Yeah.
I
Macho
know.
Man.
Macho Man. Oh, snap into a Slim Jim. I mean, that's quality podcasting right there.
Yes.
When you can do a good Macho Man, Randy Savage. But anyways, well, the reason we invited the fishing fight doc, Dr. Alex on, is because he is an avid fly angler.
Awesome.
Grew up fly fishing his whole life, and you're from one extreme in that environment with MMA.
The lights and the blood and
Yeah.
and the noise, and it's such an extreme difference.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cool contrast, and he talks a little bit about that, and just a great guest, very awesome guest. He runs a nonprofit, and he goes a little bit into the story on why he started it, and that was like really got me fired up about the podcast. So
Awesome.
yeah, so welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. Today on the remote, no pressure, we have the fly fishing fight doc, Dr. Alex. Thanks for joining us, Doctor.
Oh, absolutely. Glad to be here.
Well, I've been following you on Instagram for quite a while, and your content is amazing because it's not just fly fishing, but you have this like crazy job working with Ultimate Fighters, right?
Yeah, I've got a fun little sidekick going on.
So, do you work for MMA, like the professional, the professional league, or is it like AAA, AA, kind of like baseball, or how does that work exactly?
Well, I work. I'm in Colorado, and I work with the Combat Sports Commission here in the state. And so I work with pretty much any professional event that's going to be happening in Colorado, and that can be anything from, our local event where we've got guys just starting out in the amateur divisions and working their way up to pros, and there may be one or two pro fights on the card, to sort of mid-range stuff, televised stuff, guys trying to make it into the really, really big promotions, all the way through Ultimate Fighting Championship, Glory Kickboxing, the biggest promotions in the world. So anytime they're in Colorado, we're there cage side to take care of their athletes.
No, when you're not there with the athletes, are you a family physician, or what's your day practice like?
Yeah, I do. My main job is family medicine. I'm also a doctor of osteopathic medicine, so I do spinal manipulations, and I do quite a bit of sports medicine.
So being a DO there's a lot of different spinal manipulations, but that's nothing like a chiropractor, though, right?
No, not like that. We do. There is some overlap in some of our techniques, but we're also a fully licensed physicians and surgeons. So we do everything, prescriptive authority and procedures and regular, primary care, just your normal doctor stuff day to day.
What made you decide to pursue medicine? I mean, you had a lot of options there. What made you decide medicine?
Um, kind of several different things. I'll tell you, my other options were fishing guide and maybe becoming a priest. And so kind of three very different things, but they all kind of have something in common, and that people are going to come to you and be looking to make things better, just fishing, kind of fun stuff. Clerically, they're coming to you for some spiritual help and guidance. And then as a physician, people are coming to you with, especially family practice, all sorts of mental, emotional, physical ailments, and or just looking for some guidance to get healthier and feel better. And so, just wanted a job where I felt like I was helping people out. And ended up choosing medicine, mostly because I liked sports medicine, and just thought that would probably be the best fit for what I wanted to do.
Now, as a family physician, people coming in, you said there's a lot of mental help, there's a lot of physical and all that. I mean, do you ever find yourself as more of a counselor really than you are someone who just prescribes medication? I mean, do you feel like people come to you that way?
Yeah, absolutely, especially in primary care, if you're doing your job right. Excuse me. Your patients should trust you, and they should feel comfortable with you. And people, when they're having problems, a lot of people, the first place they go is their family physician, and they look to us for guidance. Say, hey, am I doing things right? What can I do different? Do I need to talk to someone else? Do I need to talk about medicine? Do I need to just change what I'm doing? And so people come to us with literally every complaint there is, both physically and mentally in the world. And our job is to kind of help them sort through that. And so we do quite a bit of mental health. We do quite a bit of, stress management techniques with people and help them through stressful or adverse times. We do a lot of bereavement with families and help them through losses. And it's not just, high blood pressure and diabetes and colds. We're really trying to treat every aspect of a patient. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with their physical health. And if you're good at your job, you should enjoy that and get a lot of fulfillment out of it. I think it's one of the part of my jobs that I find most fulfilling.
I have a friend of mine who's an ER doctor, and it sounds kind of like, he's the first line of defense, right? I mean, people go there first. And also it seems like you're kind of that way too. I mean, a lot of people come there. You're kind of the first person they see before they go to a specialist. I mean, you must see everything.
Yeah, we see, just in one day, you'll see everything from, your chronic disease management, through acute illness, through kids and old people and cardiac problems and cancer. And just in one day, the spectrum of what we'll see just on an average clinic day is so broad. So it makes the job pretty challenging. I'm not an expert in anything. There's no area of medicine that there's not someone who's studied it more and knows more about it on that subject, but I've got to know a little bit about everything.
Now, how long have you been a doctor, if you don't mind me asking? Have you been practicing? How long have you been practicing?
I graduated medical school in 2000, graduated residency 2003. So I've been a doctor, 19 years, almost 19 years, and been in practice for almost 16 years.
Have you noticed a change in like mental health treatment in the last 16 years? I mean, have you noticed more people coming in for that stress related to life and fast-paced life and all that? I mean, have you noticed a lot of change in that, or not really?
Yeah, there's been several changes. I think we see a little bit more now, and I think over my career, which isn't really that long when you're talking about mental health, but just in 20 years, I think we have seen a little bit lifting of the stigma of mental health, where people will actually come to their doctor and talk about it and not hide it as much, which is a good thing. That maybe we're seeing a little bit more because there's less people staying at home suffering with it. They're actually reaching out to get some help. So that's been good. I'll tell you, when I really saw a big spike was during the last economic recession, when people were losing their jobs and losing their houses and that external stress, man. We saw a whole lot of it. Big spike then, and seems like we're kind of back to sort of a steady state. But we'll see spikes, annually around the holidays. That tends to be a stressful time for people. But again, I think if I see more and more now, it's probably a good thing. 'Cause I don't think there's actually more pathology out there. I think we're just as a society kind of realizing it's actually okay to talk to someone about it, and actually reach out for a little bit of help. So I think that's actually a good sign.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really cool to hear. Now, as you see, like, medicine and mental health and all these things. I mean, you're like in the trenches every single day. I mean, what are you seeing? Like, I'm reading a book right now. I think it's called like the last child in the woods, right? And you're just not seeing kids out there playing outside and engaging with nature. Are you seeing children being affected by that, like with obesity? Do you think it's because they're not fly fishing, because they're not outdoors? What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. I see more kids that have weight issues than I think we've ever seen before. I'm seeing kids in their teens who are already having pre-diabetes and having trouble with insulin and production and blood sugars. These are things that people are genetically predisposed to, but we really shouldn't see this start to show up until you're 50, 60, 70, and it's happening in kids that are 16 and 17. I'm seeing kids with back and posture problems, and it's because they never exercise and they're sitting in their bed all day slouched, playing games or on the computer, and they're never outside. I grew up out in the prairie in Wyoming, and we didn't have cable TV. We didn't have a Atari system. We had 40 acres and a Red Ryder BB gun, and that was what we did every day. And I had a bike. And if I wanted to go to town, it was about a half-hour bike ride to town. I was welcome to do that. So we didn't sit around and play games and stuff like that. We, when we needed something to do and we got bored, we either went out and hiked the 40 acres, or we hopped on the bike and rode to town and back. And you just don't see that as much anymore. So it's definitely affecting our culture, and we're seeing the same thing in adults. A lot of sedentary people, a lot of people sitting at desk jobs all day, a lot of people, regardless of what their job is, when they're done, they're not exercising, not exercising regularly. And, we're just seeing the obesity, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all these numbers are on the rise, and it really is lifestyle.
How did you, back to what you were saying, sorry. I've got a lot of questions for you. So, but one of my questions was, that came up through this last conversation was, you have a 30-minute drive into town on your bike. Now, if I let my kids drive 30 minutes into town on their bicycle, I would probably get in trouble for neglect. It seems like it's a little bit different now to let your kids kind of be free-range children than it was back when we were kids,
Yeah, definitely. That bike never had a helmet with it either. It's not saying that everything was not always perfect. We didn't always wear our seatbelts. We didn't always make great choices. But just from a physical activity aspect and what we did activity-wise, you could still do those things today, and you might not be riding across town without a helmet. But there's no reason you can't go out with your kids and go for a bike ride. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason you can't take your kids and just go for a walk around the neighborhood, or go to the park, or take dogs out, or do stuff like that. So, it doesn't have to be the same, not necessarily safest decisions we made, but we definitely made healthy activity decisions,
Right. Yeah, I mean, there were some cars that did not have seatbelts installed in them. When we were kids, they literally were not in the vehicle. So, because my dad had an old pickup truck, an old Chevrolet pickup truck, and it did not have seatbelts in it. And that was just the way it was. It wasn't a law, and they weren't there. So, my kids can't imagine. My parents bought one of the first Dodge Caravans, and we would take out. They had the vinyl seats in them, and they would take out the center seat and lay down blankets when we would go on a road trip, and we would play with toys down there on the floor. And I would never let my children do that now, But back then,
absolutely,
it was totally normal to do that. With the MMA, what are some of those crazy things that you've seen? Can you share with us some stories? And you don't have to share names or anything, but what are some of those things that you've seen up close that were really just like, holy cow, what am I going to do?
Luckily, they're few and far between, and actually, these guys are professional athletes, and they train really hard, and they're very well conditioned, and we don't see a ton of injuries for the amount of events we do, but we see a lot of orthopedic fractures, hand fractures, things like that, forearm fractures from blocking kicks, rib fractures, things like that. There's a ton of crazy stories you can tell, but there's some pretty interesting ones. Seeing a guy get kicked in the clavicle and the collarbone and broken in the first round, and he continues to fight the rest of the fight and doesn't wince, doesn't say anything, and then after the fight tells me, "Hey doc, I need you to look at my shoulder. I broke my collarbone." I ask him, "Oh, when that happened?" He goes, "Oh yeah, that first kick in the first round."
Wow.
Like, man, you're just not built like everyone else. Some of these guys are just super tough. I've seen some really nasty fractures, things like that. Luckily, knock on wood, in almost 400 professional events, I've really only attended to one really life-threatening injury, and that was a skull fracture with an intracranial bleed. And luckily, that young man is fully recovered and very healthy, and it has no residual effect. He will never fight again because he's got a metal plate in his head. But truly, if you look at like 375 professional events with an average of let's say 12 fights per event, with an average, with 2 athletes in every fight, if you add those numbers up, for all those numbers to only have one truly life-threatening injury is pretty lucky. And the best news is he's okay.
That's great. Those numbers are super great, but I'm still not going to let my kid get kicked in the head if I can help it.
It takes a special breed. I don't know if you figured this out through reading my bio. I actually have fought MMA in the past, and I was not good at it, which is why I don't still do it. But if you're really bored one night and you want to hop on YouTube and Google my name, there's a fight out there, and I think I was winning the fight. I really do. And there's like 20 seconds left in the fight, and I get completely knocked out. So if you want to watch me get knocked out, head over to YouTube, Google my name, and then make fun of me. I've kind of come to terms with that. But what's interesting? Getting knocked out doesn't hurt. It's completely painless because you're out.
Right. Now, when you talked about the guy whose clavicle broke in the first round, and he didn't, do anything about it. I mean, these guys are a different breed, like you said. I've known a couple of guys, with the cauliflower ears, and they're just like, they're beast, What percentage of that? I mean, part of it's how they're wired, obviously, but I mean, it's got to be a lot of adrenaline pumping through their veins as they're fighting, wouldn't you say? That helps kind of block that pain out?
Absolutely. Adrenaline is a great thing for getting through injuries like that. I know. And I've seen it happen over and over again. I know that I've broken bones in training and had adrenaline and thought I was fine. And then when the adrenaline wears off, all of a sudden you're going, yeah, no, that is not fine. There's definitely something wrong there. So some of it is some of these guys are just tough and they're professionals, and that's how they get paid. And they know their drive to win is just so big that they will just go through that and not back down. Sometimes it is adrenaline. They don't really realize how injured they are until afterwards, and the adrenaline wears off. But either way, it's almost superhuman to watch, and you've got to give these guys respect.
Yeah, they are true athletes. That's no doubt about that. It's not what Hulk Hogan. It's the real deal.
It is real for sure.
Wow, what a great episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I wanted to take a minute out of the episode just to tell you about a few things that are coming up. Number one, March the 2nd, we have the Fly Fishing Film Tour in Grand Rapids, Michigan. if you're interested in getting together with the Remote No Pressure crew, we're going to have some of our guests out as well, and just have a great time and hang out. We would love to have you come. So if you're interested in that, let me know. March the 2nd. We'll probably meet up around 6 o'clock. 8 o'clock is the showing of the film. So we want to kind of get together and hang out before the show. So that's March the 2nd at 6 o'clock. The venue is to be announced. We're still looking for a place to get together. Also, check us out. Wild Bill, as I don't know if you guys have noticed, we've had some more video stuff on our Instagram and on our social, and Wild Bill's doing that. So he actually has a YouTube channel now. So if you guys are downloading us on your podcast platform, we're also on YouTube now, and we'll see what comes out of that here in the next few months. We're very excited about that. So check us out on YouTube. Also, be sure to go to our website, follow us on our socials, and that's all great. But we're really looking for people to sign up for our mailing list. That's very important. So you can do that at remotenopressure.com, because the problem is with all these social channels, the algorithms change all the time. So we want to be able to get in contact with you if we have a great episode or something like that. We want to put that in front of you, as opposed to maybe you'll see it on the social that changed the algorithm that no one sees anymore. So be sure to do that. Let's get back to the interview. Thanks again for joining us. Now, how did you end up picking up fly fishing? Was that something you did when you were a kid, or?
I kind of just grew into it growing up. I grew up in Wyoming, and I grew up in a family that wasn't an outdoors family. We didn't hike, we didn't camp, we didn't fish, we didn't hunt, even though we lived in Laramie, Wyoming, which is such a beautiful place to fish and hunt and hike and bike. My family just wasn't into that. And then, as a young, probably 12, 13 years old, we had a family friend, at a picnic one day, hand me a spinning rod at one of the mountain lakes, and had a little casting bubble and a little fly tied on a few feet behind it, and I caught my first fish. And I was like, that was awesome. That was just so cool. I caught a couple fish that day, and I was just immediately, for some reason, just completely obsessed with that feeling of like a fish grabbing that line and pulling against it and landing them. This is the coolest thing I've ever done. So talked my dad into getting me some spinning gear, old Zubco 202, if you've ever seen one of those reels.
Yes.
And then later on, open face eagle claw spinning. And I started going up to the mountain lakes and just, throwing flies on a casting bubble or throwing some spinners. And these are mountain lakes in Wyoming, not a lot of pressure, and you're going to catch some fish pretty easily. So it was easy to get into fishing that way. And I was just obsessed, man. I wasn't old enough to drive, but anytime I could talk my dad into taking me up there, he would, which was awesome. And he'd read a book, and I'd just mess around and kind of experiment. And I didn't have anyone to teach me what I was doing, so just kind of learned by trial and error. And then one day I was up, and I remember right where I was up at Lake Erie, up in the Snorri Range of Wyoming. Beautiful place. And I was standing there throwing out a spinning rod, and I saw this guy kind of walk out onto one of these rocks, and he starts what I now know is like double hauling these beautiful loops out onto the lake. And he's catching fish. Well, I'm catching fish too, but the way he's doing it was so much more graceful and eloquent and beautiful. And I was like, man, I got to do that. That's a cool way to catch a fish. So, truly, I was just like, that is cool. I want to be that guy someday.
For sure.
So I went to Kmart and plunked $15 down for a Fluger fly rod, reel, and line. $15. I still have it. I'll never give it away. I've still got that whole setup down in my basement.
Uh-huh.
And I started going out and go out to the beaver ponds, go out to the lakes, and I'd try to fly fish. And I'd take my spinning reel. When I got pissed off because I was snapping off flies and getting caught in the branches and all that, I take my spinning rod, catch a couple fish, kind of get myself recentered, and pick up the fly rod again and start practicing again. Mm-hmm. And then over the years, it took a couple of years, but I started going from doing just a little fly fishing and then going back to catching fish on a spinning rod to not really using the spinning rod as much. And within a year or two, I was leaving the spinning rod at home and just taking the fly rods up. And then had some friends start to show me stuff and loan me a real fly rod that actually had good action and weighted line, and start teaching me about different flies. And And that was it. I was hooked.
It seems like that. Well, I've said this before on the podcast that there's a many of fly anglers that started out in the aisles of Walmart or Kmart, getting that fluger reel because that's the only one that's really affordable when you're a kid or when you're starting out. You're like, I don't want to invest a lot of money because I've got a fluger. I got a fluger one as well somewhere around my house, but it seems like everyone's got one of those little combos from Walmart.
Hey, man, that thing caught a lot of fish.
So I see a lot of pictures of bonefish. Is there certain on your feed and whatnot? Is there a certain species that you like to go after more than others?
I personally, I am still, I'm a little bit of a dry fly snob, a little bit. I still love being in a nice mountain stream with a really small 2-weight, 3-weight, throwing a dry fly during a hatch and catching a trout. Just that's everything I want out of fly fishing. I'm lucky enough that I get to do a lot of saltwater fly fishing. I've got a condo in Florida, and my wife is getting her PhD in Florida, and I get to travel down to Florida a lot, down to the Keys. I've been lucky enough to go to the Bahamas and fly fish several times. I fly fish down in Patagonia. I've been lucky enough to travel around, and it's kind of cool, you catching bonefish and catching barracudas and catching Jack Crevalle, and they're all different. They're all cool to do, and night fishing for snooks under bridges is awesome. They're all a little bit different, but given my druthers, it'd be wading in a nice little stream up in the mountains somewhere on a nice summer day.
That's the best. It really is. But this past summer, I was working up in northern Michigan, north of where I'm at, up by the Pier Marquette. And then there's another river close by there. I pulled in there just to have a sandwich and whatever, and I always have my fly gear with me. I work in sales, so my fly rod's always with me. So there were these guys with some worms, and they were chucking worms. They couldn't catch anything all day, and I go out there and tie on a little Adams fly and put a little floating on it and start casting into this little drift, and I start pulling fish out, and pretty nice little brookies. And they're like, we've been fishing all day. I was like, the first time I ever outfished someone with spinning gear. That doesn't happen very often, but I was like, man, this is amazing. And I'm the same way. I like dry flies, but also like fishing for smallies like a woolly booger, which really isn't like a dry fly, but I enjoy fishing the streams too as well. You said you like to use a 2-weight?
I will. I'm also just started off just because I was poor and couldn't afford a bunch of rods. So I built a lot of my own rods, and I've built a couple really nice little 2-weights that are awesome little brookie stream rods. Nice light action, and you can get it 7 foot 6 inch. So you can kind of get into tight spaces and still get some good casts off. And if you get into a big fish, a 12, 14 inch rainbow trout on a 2-weight's kind of fun.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, is it made out of fiberglass, your rod, or what'd you make it out of?
I built mostly graphite. I've got 2 cane rods, and then the rest of mine are all graphite. I don't have any fiberglass, and I know that that's kind of a big deal for some people now. And I've never really had the chance to play around with those much.
Yeah, we've had some awesome rod builders on the podcast that have gone into great detail, and now I've got a list of rods that are kind of like my dream rods I'm looking to acquire through the next few years. But yeah, I guess fiberglass, we had Cameron Mortensen, who's from the Fiberglass Manifesto, and that podcast that episode did really well. And there's obviously a movement, back into, or, back to fiberglass, but also Tenkara as well. Have you tried Tenkara at all? Is that something you've fooled around with?
I haven't. Like I said, I'm really, when it comes to trout, I dry fly. I don't nymph at all. Maybe 1% of the time I'll throw a streamer on, and that's because I'm having just a really slow day and the fish aren't moving on the surface. But haven't done Tenkara because I'm really a match the hatch dry fly snob, and that's what I want. I want to see that fish rising before I catch him, and I want to see him take my fly. That's that's what I dream about when I dream about fishing.
Yeah, me too. Even when I used to bass fish I grew up in Texas, and I did spinning gear, so in Texas, and so we would throw topwater lures, and that was my favorite, just to see that action, to see those fish come up. So I've always been an action guy like that as well, even when I was doing spinning gear. It's just something about that take. It's just the adrenaline. It's just awesome. It's amazing.
Absolutely, man. I could waste an entire day catching little bluegill on a little cork popper just for that reason. I'm not going to catch anything bigger than my hand, but I could probably catch 100 of them before lunch, and I'd totally waste a day doing that. And I'd have no qualms with that at all. And then, let's go out and let's go rip up some jacks on some big poppers. Jack Crevalle.
Oh, yeah.
God, what an underrated saltwater fish. The old ghetto permits, we call them, and it seems like in Florida where we at, the fly fishermen are really going for snook and tarpon and kind of poo-pooing the jack. But man, first saltwater fish I ever caught was a big Jack Crevalle on a fly rod, and I'll never forget the power of that fish and the ability to make like 100-yard straight run right after they take a fly, and just like blowing my mind. I've caught trout my whole life, and I just hooked something, I don't know what it is yet, but it literally has me in the backing in about 5 seconds.
Oh.
And that just blew my mind. I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do a little more saltwater fly fishing. This is kind of cool.
We had a guy who worked with us last season, JP Murphy. We call him Murph. And he just went down to college this year down in Florida. And he was picking up saltwater for the first time. And his first saltwater fish was a jack as well. And he was telling me the guys at the fly shop are kind of like, yeah, whatever, but he hooked into one, and he said almost the same thing as you did. It freaked him out. He's like, what the heck is this thing? It was crazy.
Yeah, they are nuts, man. I little over, been about a year and a half, took my wife on a honeymoon down to the Bahamas, and she went out with a guide one day, and we are going to do some bone fishing. She hadn't caught a bonefish yet, and we pull into this little creek, and the guide tells us where it's at. She casts little shrimp up in there, little manna shrimp, and she hooked a serious bone, man. This was like, that might have been a bigger bone and it's the first time she ever felt that.
Uh-huh.
That bone took off, and unfortunately, because she'd never felt it before, she kind of panicked and it broke off. But yeah, just to see her on the bow of the boat turn around and see her face, I was like, all right, she's I know what just happened to her. And she's going to do that. And now she, as much as I'm a dry fly snob, she's turned into a saltwater aficionado. She wants the big fish all day. She wants to be out on an 8-weight, 10-weight. She wants to be catching something big and hefty, and she loves that big fish pull. So she'll still trout fish with me, but you ask her what she wants to do, it's going to be out on a flat somewhere with a big rod looking for big fish.
That's awesome. So do you guys fish a lot together?
We do. I said she's doing her PhD program now, so a little bit limited in how much we fish together, but we still try to get out a lot. It's. I think she kind of knew when she met me, and we were first dating, and then getting serious. She kind of knew, if I don't fish, I'm probably not going to see this guy a whole lot. So started fly fishing and took to it right away, and she's become quite an angler. She's actually, when her cast is on, it's on, and she's getting into a lot of different species and a lot of different fish, and she's turning into a pretty good angler.
That's really awesome. We're seeing a lot more females come into the sport, which is really cool to see that.
It is cool, and I read a lot of articles and things about what an up-and-coming portion of the market women fly fishermen are, and how we really need to be paying attention to them, and how companies and guides and things really need to start catering, because there's a little bit of differences sometimes. I'll tell you, everyone that we fly fish, first of all, they're glad Shannon's there, because otherwise it would be a quiet, awkward day, because when I'm fishing, I'm not talking to anyone. I'm kind of in the zone. So Shannon keeps the conversation going. And then, our local fly shop down in Florida, we're down by Boca Raton, and we've got the old Florida fly shop down there in Boca. And those guys down there, man, they're so good to women when they come in. They've got it figured out that that's the new market, and these lady anglers are every bit as enthusiastic, and we should definitely start paying attention to them.
Yeah, I think people are paying attention. It's really cool to see that. And organizations like Orvis is doing like the 50-50 by 2020. And, there's just a lot of cool things that are going on. We've had some really strong female guests on our show as well that are doing really cool things. And it's cool though that you and your wife have something in common, that you enjoy a hobby that you guys can do together, because that's really important.
Absolutely. I mean, it just to spend time together, and one of the best things about fishing, I think the reason I like it so much is, when you're fishing, there's part of your brain that really, if you're going to be good, really has to be tuned in, whether it's salt water and you're really like trying to visualize a fish and look for something cruising the flat, or if you're dry fly fishing and you're really trying to read the water and look for a hatch and see what's sipping and that, part of your brain really, if you're going to be good, it's got to be really, really focused and really, really tuned in on that. So that's a pretty small, specific part of your brain. The rest of your brain can kind of just be figuring out, what's going on? What's going on in my life? What's going on in my day? How am I doing? What do I need to do? And when you're out with someone, significant other, or out with a good buddy or something like that, the rest of your brain can be like catching up and really just having that connected time where TV's not on, you're not watching a movie, no one's Facebooking or Instagramming. You're just out there, and while part of your brain's really focused, the rest of it doesn't have to be. It leaves enough of your brain out there to just be like, hey, how we doing? Let's catch up. So it's a great thing to do. I feel lucky. I feel lucky because I know I've got some friends that are anglers and their spouses aren't, and I'm like, man, you should just teach them someday. And it's a great way to spend time together. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Alex, for taking some time and spending with us. If people wanted to follow you or get in contact with you, how would they do that? Or are you open to letting them find you?
Yeah, there's several different ways. On Instagram, it's Fishing Fight Doc. I'm on Facebook. If you don't mind me saying, I also have a nonprofit that I help run called the Never Alone Foundation. And we raise money to help support international adoption. So you could always, we're on Facebook, Never Alone Foundation. We also have a website, laurelsmessage.org, LaurelsMessage.org.
Can you tell us just a little bit about that organization that you run?
Yeah, Jeff, and this is really kind of off subject, but it's a big part of my history. So, I was very fortunate to fall in love in college with really my college sweetheart, and we dated, and we ended up getting married. And she became an adoption social, and we adopted 3 children, 2 from China and 1 from Korea. And unfortunately, I lost my family in an accident about 9 years ago. And this organization is in their honor and to really celebrate their lives. And so we raise money to support their legacy in adoption. And we really just want to help families adopt when they can.
What do they go to China? Are they like a middleman to help get the children from other countries to bring here? Or what is their role exactly? What is your role there?
Well, we really there. We have 3 different grant programs, really just to help. Really just to help defray the cost of adoption. So we have one grant that is helpful just in the expense of adopting, because the international adoption can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000. We have a second grant that we use that if a child is brought in with medical special needs or psychological special needs, that we will help pay for some of their medical expenses after they're adopted. And then we have a third granting program that we use for families, sometimes after an adoption, depending on what the situation was for the child in an orphanage or where they were raised, there can be some issues with some family bonding that occur. Some families can have some issues with that. So we have a program that helps pay for some family counseling for those families that are having some initial bonding issues.
Is it easier to adopt someone from another country than it is from the United States?
No, I don't think it's easy to adopt anyone. I think it's actually in some ways harder, but there's a lot of differences. I know for my late wife and I, one of the reasons we decided to adopt internationally is once you're kind of in the process, you're pretty much guaranteed to go through. Whereas in domestic adoption, our laws are really heavily weighted towards placing a child with a family. So you may be very deep into an adoption process, and very late in the process, you think you're going to have a child, and all of a sudden the long-lost aunt can step up, and the court's probably going to route that adoption to the family member. And I don't think I could have handled that kind of setback. So there's just differences. It may not be easier or harder. It's just different.
If you don't mind me asking, did your family, they were all in the same accident when they passed away?
Yeah. We were caught in a flash flood actually on a camping and fishing trip up in Wyoming.
I mean, that had to be incredibly difficult for you to handle?
Yeah, it still is, and I'm very lucky in that I've got an incredible support network. I've got incredible friends. I've got incredible people around me. I've been very, very lucky to have met my current wife, who's very understanding of who I am and where I came from, and that importance, and my importance of running our foundation and carrying that on. But learning to live with it, and every year is just a little bit easier. But yeah. I don't know what else you can say about that.
So that fire, that comes from that, you're just pouring that into the foundation. And that's such a great story. I mean, what's the website again?
laurelsmessage.org.
Okay. And you're at Fishing Fight Doc. We'll put the links up. We'll put all these links up on the show notes. Dr. Alex, I just really appreciate you sharing your heart with us, and that's really cool about the nonprofit. I didn't know that when we started talking, so I'm really grateful and thankful that you trusted us with that information and sharing that with us, and we'll be sure to get that out to some people so they can take a look at that, because adoption is a huge issue, and and giving a kid a chance, never alone. That's just great, man. I just really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you taking time with me, Dr. Alex.
It's been nice talking to you. I appreciate the opportunity, and the fishing community is a pretty cool place. You meet a lot of really interesting, cool people, and I'm happy you reached out to me, and I'm glad I met you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
All right, have a good night.
Well, thank you, Dr. Alex, and thank you for joining us on another episode of the Remote No Pressure Podcast. Be sure to check out our website, sign up for our mailing list at remotenopressure.com. Also, check us out on our social, on our Instagram, and all of that. And be sure to subscribe. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And until next time, go fishing.